Join the Golden State Republican women for an inspiring evening with Steve Hilton as he discusses the future of California. He is an expert on the political and social issues with a focus on populism, grassroots movements, and the power of innovation. We will be at the beautiful Woodland Hills Country Club.
Introducing Golden State Republican Women President Janet Price.
Well, welcome, Golden State Republican women, family, friends, guests. We're so excited you came and joined us tonight because we have a very special event, because we have a very special guest. So we know that you will be so glad that you joined us and you will learn a lot. You know, these events are not easy to prepare for and to put on. So I want to thank the team that always does this and comes through beautifully. I want to start with Sherry Gillis, our webmaster, who is so amazingly talented with her technology. And her shoulders are very, very broad because we put so much on them. And I know Sherry will corroborate that. But anyway, we do thank her for all she does. And her tech assistant is Kaylee Komatsu. And Kaylee is also our corresponding secretary. And they are a great team. In fact, they put together that video that you just saw. And they just did it, and it was debuted tonight. So I hope you enjoyed it as much as I did. And thank you both very, very much for all you do. Our co-hostesses tonight are first Vice President Gretchen Cox, in charge of programs. And Gretchen brings you great programs week after week, month after month. And we are so appreciative of all she does and contributes to GSRW. Also, our third Vice President, Nancy Wofford, is in charge of campaign and political activity. So you can imagine the year that she has had and is having. This is quite a year. So this is the time that I will turn over the event for Gretchen to introduce our distinguished speaker tonight. I look forward to it. Thank you, Gretchen.
Thank you, President Janet. It's great to be here with everybody. Welcome to all of you. And I know we have some guests who are not necessarily members of GSRW, but maybe you'll decide to become members. So to all of you who are here with us tonight, we welcome you. I just want to go over a few things before we get started with our presentation. First of all, keep your eyes, for those of you who are members and who get our regular emails, do keep your eyes on your emails so we can keep you aware of upcoming speakers and events. You get your notice through the emails, so do be sure to look for those. We have as you know, for those of you who were in the chat room and saw the video, now we are announcing for the first time tonight our first GSRW fundraiser, which is coming up October 18th. And we're so excited about this. We're just thrilled that Steve Hilton wanted to be part of this. And we're so honored to have him as our key speaker. We will have other speakers as well. We are working on those. So just be sure and set the date aside on your calendar now. If you have not ever been to the Woodland Hills Country Club, it's absolutely lovely. And this will be a really, really nice event where it's going to be informative. We're going to have laughter and information. We're going to have comedy, and we're going to have a variety of things going on. And as I mentioned off the top, this is our first fundraiser. So come prepared to help celebrate our first successful year as GSRW and help us look forward into the future. We'll have some special announcements at the event. So again, mark your calendar for October 18th. I'm going to mention real briefly something we've mentioned on our last couple of Zooms. That's the Trump Talk. That is a new phone app that the Trump campaign is asking all of us to use to help get out the vote and build support for President Trump. You can find a link to Trump Talk on our website, and you can get training on how to use it. So go to our website, www.gsrw.org, and look for Trump Talk. So before we get started, I'm just going to remind all of you, we ask you to stay muted. Not sure tonight if you have a choice or not. We do have everybody muted because we have a big crowd joining us. So we do need you to stay muted just to make sure we don't have background noise from people's homes interfering with the talk. And we do plan to finish at 7:30 tonight. So now I'm going to introduce our speaker. We're very excited to have Linda Paine, the president and founder of the for-profit C Corp Election Integrity Project California. She is the person that founded that organization, and their work is in research process throughout California. She co-founded EIPCA in July of 2017, and they are committed to ensuring that California provides EIPCA provides the best possible documentation of state and county election procedures to those in a position to address the vulnerabilities in California's electoral process per federal laws and the U.S. Constitution. Since its founding, EIPCA has trained over 20,000 nonpartisan volunteer observers in 43 California counties. And they have annually researched county and state voter rolls, and they provide a findings report with the results of that research. They are active in multiple lawsuits in both state and federal court. So Linda will talk to us a little bit about those. And just a reminder that EIPCA is a California nonprofit public benefit corporation, and they are a nonpartisan organization. So with that, I would like to introduce Linda Paine. Welcome, Linda. Thank you for being here tonight.
Thank you for having me. It is really a pleasure to be here. And I got to tell you, I have had the opportunity in our early years to speak at the Republican Women Federated in Woodland Hills. And it is just an honor to be with all of you who are there in person and who are online. We have a lot to share with you. And I hope that you'll find yourselves encouraged by the time we finish at all that California citizens have done. I'm about to show you that the propaganda that Californians are so stupid they voted to destroy themselves is exactly that. It is propaganda. So without further ado, why don't I go ahead and share? Is this the right time, Gretchen? I'll go ahead and share the PowerPoint and get started. Let me just find where the share is.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, here we go. I'm going to actually start it so you can see the whole thing. All right, so we are Election Integrity Project California. Thank you for that wonderful introduction. We are a 501c3 tax-exempt public benefit corporation. And the beginning that I want, the information, I'm just going to go through the slide by slide, and you'll hear a ton of information. Take notes, and you can ask questions at the end. The United States of America is a representative constitutional republic based on citizen self-governance. Self-governance begins with citizens choosing who will represent us in a fair, honest, transparent election process. This type of system should be likened to a vault, nothing in, nothing out, except the vote of each citizen. The right to vote is the primary right by which other rights are protected. Suffrage, which means the right to vote, not only to cast a vote, but also to have it accurately and equally counted without dilution. Supreme Court Hugo Black said, "No right is more precious in a free country than that of having a voice in the election of those who make our laws under which as good citizens we must live. Other rights, even the most basic, are illusionary if the right to vote is undermined. In the Supreme Court ruling in Reynolds v. Sims, they said the right of suffrage to vote can be denied by a debasement or dilution of the weight of a citizen's vote, just as effectively as by wholly prohibiting the free exercise of that franchise, which is the right to vote. Supreme Court ruling in Recoy, they said election results produced through any process that bends or breaks the rules deny all legal voters their voice. Even our founders knew that this was important. John Adams, in his inaugural address in 1797, said, "For it is the people only that are represented. It is their power and majesty that is reflected, and only for their good, in every legitimate government, under whatever form it may appear." He said we should be unfaithful to ourselves if we should ever lose sight of the danger to our liberties, if anything partial or extraneous should infect the purity of our free, fair, virtuous, and independent elections. He also said if an election is to be determined by a majority of a single vote and can be procured by a party through artifice or corruption, the government may be the choice of a party for its own ends and not of the nation for the national good. And that's what we're all dealing with right now. In 1993, Congress realized that elections could be manipulated and put in place the National Voter Registration Act. Congress finds that the right of citizens of the United States to vote is a fundamental right. It is the duty of the federal, state, and local governments to promote the exercise of that right. And number 3, discriminatory or unfair registration laws and procedures can have a direct and damaging effect on voter participation in elections for federal office. And we are seeing a downturn in people voting because they have a sense that there's something wrong with our election process. The purpose, they say, is to establish, the purpose of NVRA is to establish procedures that will increase the number of eligible citizens who register to vote in elections for federal office, and I would say for all offices. It is to make it possible for federal, state, and local governments to implement this chapter of NVRA in a manner that enhances the participation of eligible citizens as voters in elections for federal office. And again, I would say for all offices, to protect the integrity of the electoral process and to ensure that accurate and current voter registration rolls are maintained. Some of you may already know this, but because almost every election we have includes the elections for a federal seat, either Congress or president, almost every other election that participates in that election is considered part of a federal election. They all fall under federal law. EIPCA California, this is a quick picture of what we've done. As we said earlier, the C Corporation was founded in 2010. The nonprofit was founded in July 2017. And as of now, August 24, we have filed 2 lawsuits that are now in the courts, one in state court regarding observer rights and the other in federal court regarding the constitutionality of California's entire election process. We are getting to ready to file another lawsuit in Ventura County, which is a writ of mandate regarding the breach of cybersecurity, which was documented during the primary. And then we will file a third lawsuit after the November election. We've also filed an amicus brief with the United States Supreme Court during the Brnovich case in 2020. And because our lawsuit, our amicus brief was the only one that included evidence out of the 22 amicus briefs that were submitted, ours was the only one with evidence proving that ballot harvesting does in fact impact vulnerable populations. And so the Supreme Court ruled in favor of Arizona, that they did not have to have ballot harvesting. It's that brief is now in the Congressional Digest. So, as though we were an all volunteer organization, none of us have ever taken a penny in payment. We are all absolutely committed to restoring the Republic and then being able to keep it. And so we continue and will continue to do our work until we succeed. EIPCA is part of a larger story, though. The real story is about God's providential hand in California. This is the story of amazing California citizens who rose to address the attack of the freedoms protected by the Constitution. And it's an ongoing story that all of you continue in keeping the Republic. California citizens were shocked into activism in 2008, the way the rest of the country woke up in 2020 and began to build coalitions to work together to pass Prop 8. Some of you may remember this, but back in 2008, I was not involved in politics at all. I was homeschooling my kids and organizing events with the independent study program we were with. But we got a call that there were Prop 8 organizers were putting together this proposition that marriage between a man and a woman, we needed to get it passed, and it did pass by almost 65% of the vote in California, even LA County, twice, but it was overturned twice by the same judge. And in this, I'm going to show you the next one is the map. I'm going to put it, you're going to see maps as I talk, because I want you to keep in mind, we know how big California is, but until you see the map, sometimes we are focused on where we're living. But Prop 8, for this proposition to pass by almost 65% of the vote, it took all of us back then to make phone calls. We didn't have computers and smartphones. We got on the phone with phone trees. Some of you might remember those, but throughout this huge state, through phone trees and knocking on doors, through churches meeting together, schools, political groups, citizen groups, all working together to get the signatures, to get Prop 8 on the ballot, and then to get it passed. And it was heartbreaking to have it overturned the first time when the judge said, well, the language isn't quite right. So the Prop 8 folks got together, fixed the language, put it out there again. We started burning up the phones and knocking on doors, and got it done again a second time, 65%. But this time the judge just simply said, I don't agree with it, and he overturned it. The outrage by so many of us who worked so hard to put it on the ballot was so similar to what happened in 2020. We really realized that something is terribly wrong. But then the very next year was 2009. And many of you might have remembered Congress was going to pass TARP, which was a bailout of the banks and financial industries. And many of us across the country were now doing the same thing. We were calling our legislators. We were making phone calls. We were meeting in person, pressing our legislators to vote no. TARP was the Troubled Asset Relief Program. And it was in fact passed by Congress and signed into law by President W. Bush. And with that, the Tea Parties erupted all over the country. California, 2,400 Tea Party groups were started. We had the largest number of Tea Parties than there were in any other state, including Texas and Florida. And that's because already, if you can begin to imagine the state of California, there was a layer of coalition and networking together to get Prop 8 passed. And the people already involved, me included, for the first time, got involved in politics through the Tea Party. I was one of those Tea Parties that started. I was looking at a website with American Family Associates, and they said, we need people to organize. And I thought, well, I could help. So I signed up on their website to help with the Tea Party. And in 5 minutes here on the website said, we've got a Tea Party started in Santa Clarita. Call Linda Paine. I almost had a heart attack. And I thought, well, I've got to tell somebody. Well, with another 5 minutes, there was another, Brenda Cox, we have another one in Santa Clarita. I thought, I'll call Brenda and tell her I'll help. In another 5 minutes, I got a phone call from Brenda Cox saying, hey, I'm just going to help. Anyway, we had a big laugh. We sat down together and we figured out how to organize citizens in Santa Clarita, our community. And we actually pulled together a rally of 1,700 people. People all over the state of California stood up and really began to unite and work together to challenge what was already beginning to be a huge concern of laws that were being passed throughout the state. In 2010, the Tea Party groups began to network together with citizen groups in regions. So you had the northern region with Shasta County and Siskiyou. A lot of the Tea Party groups up there began to form and began to compare notes about how the laws were impacting ranching and forestry. All through the state, you had the 9 Bay Area counties formed, the Central Valley, Central Coast, and 6 of these 9 counties down in the southern counties. And we all began meeting together. In the southern counties, we called it SoCal Liberty Coalition, and we, regardless of what region of the state you were in, for the first time, we were talking to each other through email blasts and phone calls and communications and comparing notes to see what kind of laws were being passed in the various counties. And that's when we in the southern counties learned about the little smelt fish that was being used to shut down the water to our farmers. And we were pretty shocked with that. So we began to go back to our counties. We met in Pasadena every 2 weeks, went to our counties, looked into the laws, and we specifically looked into our counties to see if there was an effort to use fish or critters to give control of our waterways to the federal government. And we were finding all kinds of similarities throughout the state where by using the Endangered Species Act, like they did with the little fish, they were able to control the waterways. So with that in 2010, many of us started to ask the question, how in the world are these elections formed? And who are these people passing laws and making laws that none of us are voting for? We couldn't think of anyone who wanted to do any of the things that were being passed by our legislators. And we decided that we needed to have a look-see to see how the elections were, how they functioned, because not one of us in SoCal Liberty Coalition knew how the elections worked. We didn't know the laws. We all knew we had to go vote. We knew to get out the vote, but we didn't understand how the system worked. So in 2010, as we went to go have a look-see, we set up a Yahoo group. We said, we're going to go observe all of the elections in the southern counties. And so we identified a candidate specifically in San Diego County that he was so popular amongst all of the political parties. He had 400 volunteers. I'm trying to think of his name, Nick Papadich. He was an Iraqi vet and really was so solid. I mean, he wasn't political or partisan, even though he was Republican. But the bottom line is, as we went and observed the polls in the six of the 9 counties, we noticed in San Diego County that there were trolleys and buses coming in from Mexico, bringing people to the polling locations. Because remember in 2010, when we voted in 2010 and even in 2012, we had 1 day of voting. We had paper ballots. We didn't have to show ID, but many of us would show ID and it was no big deal. They finished the voting on 1 day, they counted them up, and by the end of the night, we knew who won. And so we were seeing things across these 6 of these 9 counties that we were concerned about, like the buses coming through. We asked the polling locations where buses and people coming from the trolleys and then bus to the precincts. We asked the inspectors, how do they know if any of these people are not citizens? And we'd get the deer in the headlights, like they never thought to ask, or they were not trained on it. Nobody knew. And so there were enough things happening in that 2010 election that were so concerning. We did set up the Yahoo group and we had everybody share what they were seeing so we could compare notes. By election day, Nick Papadich was going to have a huge party. He was slated not just to win, but it was going to be a landslide. Well, about 10 minutes before the close of the polls, there were some journalists who showed up to his headquarters, and one of them asked his campaign manager, so what does Nick think about losing? And his campaign manager said, the polls haven't even closed yet. The journalist said, we'll wait. And at exactly 8 o'clock, when the polls closed, that race was called not for Nick Papadich, but for a very corrupt opponent. And at that time, we knew something was terribly wrong. Everybody knew something was wrong. And so 4 of us from SoCal Liberty Coalition got on a phone call the next day with an election law attorney up in Sacramento County. And we ran by her all of the stories that people were telling on our Yahoo group, and especially these trolleys coming into San Diego County. She told us that they knew it was a problem. She said by 2010, they knew Republicans were needing to win about 10% more votes in order to win, but they felt there was nothing they could do about it because it would become political. She said the candidates and the parties cannot fix this. And if the issue of integrity in the elections was going to be addressed, it was going to have to be addressed by citizens. It was going to have to be based on integrity because our work would surely be challenged. And it would need to be nonpartisan because elections are for all citizens constitutionally. They're for all citizens, regardless of party affiliation. And she did let us know that California is one of 29 states that has laws that allow citizens to observe the entire election process lawfully. We have laws that let us ask questions, get answers. We don't have to be assigned to a polling place by either political party. And so she said, since we have this ability in California, really it would need to be a citizen organization. And so we did. The four of us hung up from that call. And on December 28th, 2010, we met with an attorney and we formed Election Integrity Project. It wasn't California yet because that's when we added California is when we became the nonprofit. Election Integrity Project's mission statement is to ensure integrity of that part of our republic through which citizens exercise our most fundamental right, the right to choose our representatives by fair, honest, transparent elections. Our purpose of our work is to restore integrity to the election process with the goal of ensuring every lawfully cast vote is accurately counted. In 2011 through 2012 is when we began to take the idea of observing the process. We'd heard about True the Vote out in Texas, and many of us throughout the state, unbeknownst to ourselves, flew to Texas and took the Texas training with True the Vote. And that's where many of us met from the Bay Area, from Central Valley. And we looked at how True the Vote was running their program. And we came home, and those of us with SoCal Liberty Coalition said, we need to do the same thing. We need to build the same kind of observer program. It had never been done in the state of California, but we had the laws. And so we began to do that. Well, the first thing we did is we set up a Facebook and a Twitter page, just like everyone else. And we started trying to send out email blasts like we had been doing with the Tea Party group. But all of a sudden, we couldn't get our emails to go to where they needed to go. And we had our Facebook and Twitter pages blocked right away. We couldn't send the message we wanted to send. So we realized that if we were going to be able to build the ship and sail it, as I often say, at the same time, in time for the 2012 elections, we were going to have to do it in person. And because, again, this is where I see God's providence, 2008, coalitions built in order to get Prop 8 passed. The next year, 2009, the Tea Party, 2,400. And we began working together through 2009 and 2010 through regions and communicating. So once I knew we could not do this electronically, I had a massive list of contacts from all of those organizations. And so I began to make calls. And so for the year of 2011, I drove throughout the state several times, meeting with organizations just like yours and sharing with them our idea to observe and document the election process, because we thought that the registrars must not know what's going on, and the Secretary of State must not know, because it's such a big state, don't you know? But if we could document it, we could get out there, observe it, document it, we could bring to them reports and show them where the problems were, where the weaknesses are, and then they could address it. And then by 2012, we'd get back to normal. Well, wherever I traveled, whatever group I spoke with, I had a sign-up sheet. And between 50 to 100% of every single group throughout the state of California, when I asked, would you like to be part of observing the election process in your county, they signed up. It was pretty amazing. Now by 2012, let me see, I think I do have another. There we go. Now I'm going to go to that next in just a second. In time for the 2012 election, we began working to put together the first ever training manual. And we had it ready in time for the 2012 primary. By the 2012 primary, we were able to observe the election process in 40 out of 58 counties. We observed here throughout the Bay Area, up here in Shasta County in the north, all through the Central Valley, through the Central Coast, and all through the large counties down in the south. And we got a pretty good idea of what we needed to look for and where the issues were. And one of the first things we identified is very few of the poll workers were well trained. So between the primary and November, we ramped up our training. We trained our observers in federal and state election law, made sure they understood what to do. We had hotlines, and we had an idea of how to present issues to the registrars. As soon as they were called into us, we called the registrars in an attempt to address the issues. We did this all through the years, but I'm going to this next one, so I'm going to keep my eye on the time here. What we documented by following the same pattern in 2017, we put this together because in 2017, we had identified the same thing from 2012 going forward. And the biggest issue we saw in 2012 is that California cast approximately 40% of all provisional ballots nationwide. And we documented how that was happening. I'm going to back up again to this map. Throughout the state of California, our observers were out in the field, and they were calling into us, telling us that people were coming into the polling locations and taking down the street index, which hangs on the door of every polling location. The street index has the name and address of the voters who were supposed to vote at that polling location. But there were people coming and taking it down, and they were writing down the name and addresses of those voters on pieces of paper, 3x5 cards. And our observers called us, told us what was going on. We would call the registrar and ask the registrar if this was appropriate. The inspectors had no idea that they could have told those people no. So again, we saw a lack of training there, but it was between 8 and 10. Then it all stopped. Then the rest of the day went on as normal. And then somewhere between 3 and 4, we began seeing long lines of people lined up at the same polling locations, and ending somewhere between 5 and 6, depending on the polling location. And what we documented was people were coming to vote, and in their hand, they had a piece of paper or a 3x5 card with a name of a voter and an address. And at that time, it was required, California law required the poll workers who were checking the in-person voters in to ask the voter to state their name and address out loud. That was a law, that was a good law that protected in-person voters from being impersonated. But across this big state, we saw a pattern of people, when they came to vote, instead of stating anything, they simply handed that piece of paper to the first clerk. Instead of the clerk saying, speak your name out loud, they weren't trained to do that. They simply took the paper, looked for the name, checked it off, and then handed the piece of paper to the next clerk, who looked for the address, looked it in the book, checked it off, handed the piece of paper to the third clerk, and the third clerk is where the check-in book is. So if you get to that spot and they've accepted your name and address, you sign the book saying that you're there to vote. We learned that those signatures are never compared to the voter registration affidavit. And so if someone wanted to impersonate a voter at the polls, all they had to do is what I just described to you. Well, by 6 o'clock, our observers throughout the state were hearing people coming in and being told they had already voted. And of course, they were saying they had not already voted. The only solution for all of those people throughout the state was to be given a provisional ballot. And provisional ballots are only counted if, when they review who voted and they see there was no vote by mail or absentee ballot, it was called at the time, and that the name was not signed in that book, then they would go ahead and count the provisional ballot. So the fact is, all those people who had been voted for by someone else, those voters were disenfranchised. They were made to think that they got to vote with a provisional ballot, but in fact, it wasn't counted. When Pew Research came out with this report that California cast 40% of all provisional ballots nationwide, it coincided with the documentation that our observers had in 40 out of 58 counties of the numbers of people who were had someone vote for them in the in-person voting. as the years, each year went on, there were more laws that were passed by legislators broadening the use of voting by mail. And by 2016, California cast approximately 1.2 million of all provisional ballots nationwide. Again, we're looking at provisional ballots. We were not a vote by mail voting state like we are now at the time. Still, people voted in person, people preferred to vote in person. But in 2016, where we got that number is the United States Election Assistance Commission. In their report of provisional voting in 2016, they said there were 2.5 million provisional ballots cast in 2016, with nearly half of those ballots cast in California. Of the provisional ballots cast, 71% were counted either partially or full. Now, as I just was explaining to you, you can only count a provisional ballot if it shows that someone else did not already vote. So provisional ballots are only cast if there's a problem. But by 2016, this begins to show you that California's election management, the way that California runs their elections, from voting in person or voting by mail, it was so problematic that all of these ballots were having to be cast provisionally. Of the rest of the research we did really quickly in here, we have checked the voter rolls since 2011. We know that the voter rolls are not maintained. We know that poll workers are not trained. It has not really gotten better from 2012. We all know the problems with the machines. And we know the vulnerable populations are seniors, college students, and non-citizens. And we identified very early on that non-citizens are easily added to the voter rolls even without their knowledge. And that's because of the National Voter Registration Act, Section 7. Section 7 requires all government agencies who provide aid, food stamps, HUD housing, Social Security money, Medicare, they must provide a voter registration application. And there's no requirement for those agencies to ensure that only citizens get that application. So that's a flaw in NVRA. We're hoping the next Congress, if we can really see a change in Congress, that they will address NVRA and correct that particular loophole. But the non-citizens often are added to the voter rolls. Their materials are not sent to them. They're sent to warehouses or post office boxes where others can mark them in and turn them in and then send them in as a vote by mail ballot. So again, it's the process that the IPCA has been documenting the entirety of all the elements of the vote by mail voting system. And we've documented it is unconstitutional because it allows for all of these issues to take place. Though the Constitution gives authority to state legislators to pass laws to manage elections and process ballots, the IPCA asserts they do not have carte blanche authority to pass laws that diminish the value of lawfully cast ballots. Election Integrity Project California strongly alleges California's current electoral process to be unconstitutional and is challenging over 20 California election laws on that basis. We created this picture to give you an idea of what's happening to California, first in California, now the whole country. The transformation from a republic, which is government by the citizens, to an oppressive oligarchical democracy, which is government by a select few, is made possible through a corrupt and easily manipulated electoral process. You have the legislation on the one pillar. That legislation that our legislators passed took what should be a vault and have turned it into a sieve. All manner of information in and out. Voter roll mismanagement. We'll go into that. I've got another slide for that. The election procedures, which I've been sharing with you, all of that combined ends up with the removal of constitutional rights. Why? Because when the electoral process can be manipulated, it becomes more like a Trojan horse, where those who are manipulating the process make it manipulatable so that they can choose who is elected rather than citizens choosing our own representative. But there is actions to take, and it's we the people. We the people are to keep the republic. We hold up the republic, And it's because of all of you amazing people who've ever turned in even just one incident report as a citizen or an EIPCA trained observer. Your efforts are making a difference. Now, EIPCA retained Landmark Legal Foundation in 2017 to show our attorney, Mike O'Neill, what happens to a state when citizens cannot choose those who govern. We chose a week, 6 days. In 2017, he flew out from Virginia. I picked him up there and we drove him through the state of California, where our teams had put together a place for him to meet privately with business people, ranchers, farmers, people who worked in mayor's offices, observers, you name it. So starting from Shasta County, moving his way down, we drove Mike through the state across. Imagine that big map. Starting in Shasta County, he met with people in the morning. Then we put him in a car, drove further down. He met with people again in the afternoon, and then we drove further down, and he met with people again in the evening for 6 days. And we had people sign up to meet with him and to bring with them their documented evidence of what was happening, either in business, the water rights that were happening across the board. So by the time we got Mike 6 days later down to San Diego, where we flew him back to Virginia, we had to mail him 3 large boxes of evidence that people brought with them, showing exactly what was happening to California, not by the vote of the people, but because at all levels of governance, people were being voted in and not necessarily with the confidence of the voters. Mike O'Neill reviewed all of the documentation that was brought to him, and he filed 4 briefs on behalf of the IPCA and the citizens of California, 2 with the Department of Homeland Security and 2 with the Department of Justice, asking them to take action in California, especially in Homeland, where one of the volunteer organizations down in the southern counties had been documenting that the Mexican consulates were being built in every single county in the South, close to where our legislators were voting. And they had on camera where oftentimes our legislators were meeting with people in the Mexican consulate. What was going on there, we don't know, but it caused us alarm that there could be undue impact by foreign government into laws that were being passed in our counties. So we have this still body of documentation that we continue to work with. And we also worked with Mike O'Neill with Landmark Legal Foundation to file that amicus brief on behalf of the Arizona case that I spoke of earlier. In 2017, we also retained Judicial Watch. We'd run a press release with massive issues in California's vote count, statewide voter roll database. And Judicial Watch contacted us and talked with us about how we run our data, how we secure it. And after a couple of long conversations, he felt that our evidence was solid. And so we retained Judicial Watch to file a lawsuit against the Secretary of State and the LA County Registrar for violation of National Voter Registration Act voter list maintenance requirements. In January 2019, the IPCA won a settlement agreement with the attorneys with Secretary of State and LA County that required them to comply with the NVRA requirement to remove the inactive registrants. Our research of the data from October 23 shows that the state has actually removed 2.5 million inactives since 2020 in both LA County and across the state. The inactives were as high as 5.4 million in mid-2020. They are now down to 2.9 million. So the good news is the lawsuit made a difference. They did begin to comply. The challenge with California's voter rolls can be found on our website with an open letter to the Secretary of State, identifying other issues that are not necessarily list maintenance, but issues within VoteCal. We've identified VoteCal is not trustworthy, it's not reliable. We sent a letter to the Department of Justice with an encrypted drive showing them that in 2020, the VoteCal system was unreliable and could not be maintained. So it wasn't a matter necessarily of non-compliance with NVRA. It's a matter of the system can be breached. On our website, if you go to eip-ca.com, scroll to the bottom of that landing page, you'll find that open letter and 4 questions. One of the questions we ask is why are people who show place of birth as a foreign country in 2017 all of a sudden showed that their place of birth is California in 2020. That document, it's a live link, you can click on it. That document is 14 pages long. And in that document, you say, and also why are some people that show they were born in a different state in the United States in 2017, and then in 2020, it shows they were born in California. So again, we're continuing to challenge that as part of our federal lawsuit as well. It's part of the system that is put in place, a statewide voter roll database that should be decertified, and a one put in place that actually works. EIPCA is challenging California's unconstitutional election laws passed by our legislators, regulations implemented by the Secretary of State, and procedures used by the registrars to manage elections and process ballots. Combined, this is called the electoral process. All of the elements is part of the election process or electoral process. They're interchanged. But we've learned you cannot just go after one aspect of the process. You can say, what about the machines? If we get rid of the machines, it'll be okay. It will not. You might say, if we just get the voter rolls cleaned, it'll be okay. It will not. And that's why I showed you the earlier chart. It is a system that works together. This lawsuit will set precedents. It's the first time in American history that a lawsuit like this has ever been filed. And all of you who've ever observed for EIPCA since 2012, all the way through this primary in 2024, and if you sent in incident reports, citizen incident statements, or EIPCA trained incident reports, those are being used in this lawsuit. Just from 2020, 21 and 22, we have 10,000 signed incident reports or affidavits from citizens in 43 out of 58 counties. As we work our way through the process of the courts, we want to get those incident reports seen by the courts, because then they will see that the system that we've documented is in fact unconstitutional. The success of EIPCA's lawsuit is vital in restoring our constitutional republic and true self-governance. A win in California is a win in every state, because laws that are unconstitutional in California are unconstitutional in all states. The case went to court. We filed the case in 2021, January 21. It went to court May 10, 2021. The judge dismissed it, just like all the lawsuits in 21 were dismissed, saying the case did not have standing. We immediately filed an appeal with the Ninth Circuit, and we went through the process of going through all the briefs. In November 2022, the Ninth Circuit Court of Appeals ruled that EIPCA has strong standing, and sent the case back to the judge who tried to dismiss the case, said it's time to get into discovery. And everyone, the reason we got strong standing is because, number one, so many of you observed and documented in your counties and submitted your incident reports. And because we attempted to address the issues at the county level first, where we were ignored. 2013, we met with the Secretary of State to address the issues there. We were ignored. 2014, we had a civil rights hearing where where we brought evidence and 82 California EIPCA observers to a day in front of the commissioners to present the evidence. The regional commissioner for the U.S. Commission on Civil Rights was so stunned when he walked into the staging area to see the massive amount of documentation, and again to hear the evidence and testimony of so many people, that his report, as he spent a couple of months working with us and verifying this and that, the report he was writing was so damning to the Secretary of State and to LA County that it would have made a difference. However, before it could go be submitted, it was heavily redacted and buried. It had to be rewritten, and we worked to help them put some of the brief together to send it back in. But the bottom line is, at that point in time in 2014, we knew that this was just not a California issue. There was something much bigger at stake here, that the commissioner, his report was shut down that way. Anyway, but that's why we have standing, because we worked at every level to get the evidence looked at. In 2023, we should have been in discovery. In discovery, we are going to be able to go into the 15 counties and look at the actual remade ballots. We'll look at the envelopes, signatures, so we can show how many didn't follow the law. Basically, we'll look at the adjudicated ballots. So in 2023, we were supposed to be in discovery, but the attorneys for the 15 counties and the attorneys for the Attorney General and the Secretary of State kept playing games, is what I call it. And so once again, the judge filed in July, he tried to dismiss the case again, claiming that the 10,000 signed affidavits from 43 out of 58 counties is nothing but garden variety. And garden variety is a legal phrase they use to say there's nothing to see here, there's no proof, nobody knows what's going on. They haven't looked at anything yet, by the way, but he wanted to get it off his docket. Well, we immediately filed an appeal with the Ninth Circuit a second time. February 5th, 2024, the Ninth Circuit Court of Appeal heard the oral arguments. And just the 15th, just a couple of days ago, we finally heard from the Ninth Circuit Court of Appeals that they had ruled against AIPCA, saying that, yep, it's just nothing but garden variety. Well, we're going to appeal their ruling. We're asking for an en banc hearing. That's there's 29 judges. We're asking that we have first, all 29 judges, we're going to appeal to all 29 to ask them for a new hearing. If they grant us the new hearing, 11 of the Ninth Circuit judges will hear us again. And in fact, we just met with our attorneys today to strategize on how to move forward to continue to press that our evidence be looked at. The judges got it wrong. Judge McLean Wardlaw is a very partisan judge. She wrote, vote dilution claim requires a showing of disproportionate voting power for some voters over others. EIPCA has not made and cannot make that showing based on the facts. Mind you, they've not looked at any facts. Our case is not a dilution of the vote, is not the basis of our lawsuit. It's a result of the unconstitutional electoral process. If there's going to be a dilution of the vote because some votes count more than others, it's going to be because the ballots that belong to nobody, to deceased, to people who've moved, those ballots are being counted as equal to United States citizens. That will be the dilution. But we've got to fight our way through the system and get to the point where we can be heard that this is not a typical dilution of the vote kind of case. It is a unconstitutional electoral process case. The point of our lawsuit is to challenge the constitutionality of election laws, Secretary of State regulations, and ROV policies and procedures used to manage elections and process ballots. EIP will continue our effort to work our way through the system until the evidence is actually reviewed by the courts, even if we have to go to the United States Supreme Court to do that. What's next? Citizen observation with a purpose made it possible to document exactly how this unconstitutional system was put in place. Educated citizen observers will be needed to restore the Republic in 2024. And we have put together for this year what we call our Citizen Observation Education Program. There's no way that EIPCA can actually do our training, which is like a 4-hour training, with enough people to observe all of 60 days worth of the election season. And so we put together this education program where it also allows us to educate Republican Women Federated presidents. So when we became a nonpartisan, all of the amazing Republican Women Federated board members and Central Committee people that we always worked for, trained, we couldn't do that anymore because the IRS would pull our nonprofit standing. They look at leaders of political groups or political organizations as being that we were to be favoring that party by training that party. So this is how we're going to get around that. We're just going to educate everybody. So if you can even start right now becoming educated on what to look for, how to observe in 2024. And we encourage every organization out there to do this. Go to our website, you click on the box, Citizen Observation Education Program. And in there, you'll see a live link to the Citizen Observer Guidelines, the Citizen Incident Statement forms, and the instructions. Then there will be 3 boxes on our website where there are amazing articles, many of them written by Ruth Weiss and others of our writers. But these are articles, if you click on each one, Vote Safe articles, Demystifying the Mysterious California Election Laws, and then California and the Laws That Divide. These, when you click on them, there'll be a series. Some of them, there's 5, 6, 9 links for each article that was written. We encourage you to go to our website now, click on the box, click on each link and download that PDF, put it in a notebook, 3-ring hole punch it or put it in a sleeve, but begin to study it now. You could work together with your groups, form study groups, and that way you become educated in what you're looking at. In 2010, when we went out, we didn't know what we were looking at. We just knew something looked wrong. We couldn't fix anything in that 2010 election. But by 2012, we knew exactly what we were looking for and we knew how to address it. And that's what we want to equip all of you to do, is to understand the system, know what you're looking for. And by the way, in this section, when you click on there, there will be hotlines in several of the counties and a statewide hotline. If you have a question, you can contact us. If it can't be found in the articles that we read or in the guidelines, we'll be able to answer that for you so that you'll know what to do and what action to take. And so this is our website. This is where you can go to find it. You can sign up to get our newsletters. This right here, Golden State Agenda, we encourage everyone to download that and print it. Ruth Weiss is the author of that, Golden State Agenda. We have documented all of the laws that our legislators put in place to build this horrific system. And so we think every organization, every citizen should be aware of what those laws are. These are the laws we're challenging in our lawsuit. Of course, you can donate to our lawsuits. If you look right here, that is the complaint that we filed in 2020. It's a Second Amendment complaint now. We encourage those who are interested to download it and look at that as well. And so with that, I'm finished with the presentation, and I'm open for questions. I can do a stop sharing if you like, and we can do questions, Q&A.
Hi, Linda. Can you hear me? Can everybody hear me?
I can hear you.
Yep. Okay, great. This is Gretchen. I'm going to actually let the questions get led off by Nancy Wolford, our third vice president, and we're going to kind of alternate asking you just a couple of questions while we still have a few minutes left, okay?
Okay.
All right, go ahead, Nancy.
Thank you, Linda, and thanks to all the people that you work with. I mean, what you do is so admirable and important, and California is the model for the rest of the country, and it matters what happens here. I would like to know what election integrity thinks about voting in person, or do we vote early? What is the I don't know, what do they say?
Well,
Election.
EIPCA is always going to encourage you to vote in person as close to election day as possible. Why? Because we've documented what they do when they process the ballots. So when you vote by mail, the law says that we have the right to a private ballot. So when you've got your ballot at home, it's private, you mark it, nobody sees it. But once you put it in an envelope and you hand it off to someone else, the post office, a drop box, your registrar's office, wherever you take it, once it's out of your hands, you have to give up your right to privacy. And that means you're giving permission to the people who are handling your ballot to make decisions from the very minute they receive the ballot. 2018, Marin County, we had a report. She wasn't one of our observers. She was with the Republican women up in Marin County, and she was observing for the club. And she noticed that they were bringing the ballots in from the post office. And as they were sorting them, they were putting several of the ballot envelopes into a cardboard box. And so she took a peek just into the cardboard box and noticed that they all had 2 zip codes. And she recognized the zip codes as 2 of the really conservative areas in Marin County. She asked the person in charge of the processing as they came in and asked, why are these 2 zip codes being dropped into this cardboard box? She was immediately ushered out and the door locked. She didn't know she had the right by law to have stayed and said, no, I have the right to ask and you have to answer me. She wasn't trained. That's why we have this education training. But from that point, if they identified those, not everybody working to process ballots has an intention to cheat, but there are enough political operatives within the processing of those ballots that all manner of decisions are made by your ballot. And we've documented it, which is why we're suing against this process. We're challenging the process. Some people are going to need to vote by mail. Okay, if you're going to vote by mail, then what we're saying, second best, in every county in the state of California, every citizen club, every group, just like we did in 2008 with phone calls, knocking on doors, get involved and observe. Take that training and cover every single week of the 2 months that California is processing ballots, and make sure you know your rights as an observer to challenge, to ask questions, to call us if you have a question. But there's 80%, I think over 80% of Californians vote by mail now. So regardless of what our opinion is, vote at home. When you go to vote and you put it in the box, sometimes you have to use a machine, but still no one can manipulate it. Either way though, it's observing and protecting the processing of the ballots that is most important right now.
Okay. Yeah. Now you were talking about the provisional ballots, and it kind of seems like the sneaky way that they put in ballot harvesting as well. What do you think of
ballot harvesting? I believe is totally unconstitutional. Vulnerable populations are, we've documented, are completely manipulated. So our observers have followed ballot harvesters to actually document what they're doing. And they've documented going to seniors or even to residential senior living and saying, oh, we're here to pick up your ballot. And so the voter can say, oh, I'm not ready yet. And they'll say, well, let me help you with that. And then not only do they don't just pick up the ballot for them, they actually help them mark it. So I know a lot of churches say, well, we'll be the hub, bring your ballots here, we'll take them in. So my concern is just a concern, but I just shared with you what happened in Marin County, where they were looking at zip codes. What would it be in LA County? Here are all the ballots from Grace Baptist Church. How do you think they're going to vote? I mean, we give them too much information is what my concern is. We know that there are operatives processing our ballots. Why give them so much information? So, but either way, we can't change all that. So I just encourage you, we need to not fight with each other over it. We need to come together and share the information we have. But bottom line, we need to make sure every time that they are processing ballots that there are trained people observing and documenting what's happening and challenging if you need to, that the process, for instance, signature verification, a ballot goes by every second. There's no way they're looking at signatures if the ballot envelope is going by. We can challenge that. We can say the process you're using is not conducive to actually checking signatures. So
Linda, this is Gretchen again. I'm gonna ask just two real short questions because we're over time right now. So
Gretchen,
very briefly, I know there's
Gretchen, remember, we have given her an extra half hour.
Oh, okay. That's
Remember
fine.
that? Because
Okay.
so much information, and so we said we
Okay.
would specifically for her until 8 o'clock.
Okay, very good. Everybody sit tight then.
okay.
So somebody wanted to know if you do any space. I just want to ask this one in case people want to follow you somewhere. Do you do any spaces on X? I'm not even sure what that question means, but
Well, we've tried to put our communications up on social media, and our challenge is we don't have a lot of volunteers who can manage social media. So we don't have a big presence on social media, not because we're not willing to, we just are stretched too thin to manage it. But what we will say is if we put something up on our website, all of our articles we send out and communications, or even if this is recorded and someone, if we could share that, they can share it on their social media sites. And that's maybe how it can be pushed out a little bit better.
Okay, that's good information. And Linda, what can you tell people who are volunteering to do the poll watching and they go through the training? But I've done this a number of times, and there's still always that kind of hesitation or concern, like, okay, what am I going to do if I see something that I know is wrong because I learned about it in training, and I'm trying to let the people that are the leads at the polling place know about it, or the voting center these days, and nobody's listening to me, nobody's reacting. What are my options?
So this is the part that that is so important. So if I'm an observer, I'm watching a signature verification worker whipping by, and I raise my hand, or I go over to the inspector or the supervisor. Each county has a different name. And I want to say, I've got a question about this person doing signature verification. They're flying by. There's no way that they can check a signature at that speed. And they say, well, we don't have time. Nothing can be done. Your very next step, when your question isn't addressed, is to step outside and call the hotline. Now, if you're an EIPCA coordinator, EIPCA trained observer, you'll call the EIPCA coordinator, who will then call the registrar and say, we've got a problem at the ballot processing center, or if it's something going on at a vote center. But that's the next step. If the authority in the position where they're doing the work ignores you, then we go above to the next level of authority, which is the registrar. If they do nothing about the issue, then Ruth or I, Ruth is our vice president, and we will then call the registrar on behalf of the company. And if nothing is done, then we can have one of our attorneys contact them.
I've been listening to Linda Paine.
But we find most of the time, if the coordinator or someone from EIPCA calls the office, then it does get addressed. But sometimes it takes a little pushing from us at the higher level. So don't be ignored. Just call the hotline, which we'll give you in the education section, the guidelines.
Nancy, are you back? I think she's having a little
Yeah,
internet trouble. She's kind of on and off. Are you there?
I'm kind of in and out. Are we at a question?
You're on now. You're on
Okay.
now. Go. Do you want a couple of?
All right.
Go
I wanted to ask what is being done about after the votes have come in and they're doing the counting and stuff. What has been done about observation at that level? Is there anything that your group handles that way?
Yep. Every citizen in the state has the right to observe that. That's where you've heard that power way back when, knowledge is power. And that's exactly where we're at in California, which is why I appreciate being on your call tonight. Knowledge is power. The state of California has some of the best observer laws in the country. And we have the right to observe every aspect of the election process. That means every EV, not, you can see this, but not this. Now, if that's what they're going to say as well, we can't let you see that, then you call the hotline. Every single time when they prevent you from observing, you call the hotline. Now, we're challenging the Secretary of State because some of her regulations are trying to put a damper on observers. Her regulations are saying, oh, these observers are so scary. You registrars, you can push them back as far as you want. And some are. They're saying you can be 30 feet back. But again, they contact the hotline, which is the IPCA's hotline. And then we contact the registrar and let them know she's in violation of law. They hate to hear that, but they are. No matter what the Secretary of State says in her regulations, she cannot supersede California's observer laws. She doesn't have the authority to do it. And so we challenge them if they prevent you from observing the counting or the showing the tallies, whatever's there.
Okay. Like when you started the election integrity group, the elections kind of seemed more, I don't know, safe or fair. And then it just, now the citizens just have no confidence in it. Has 2020 changed the way you've gone about doing business as your group?
We have not, because there's a lot of hype about how dangerous it is. I think part of that is to scare us from going. What we've dealt with instead, and we've addressed it, where in some counties they'll say, okay, if you're going to come, you need to sign in and put your name and phone number and all that. And we have pushed back on that to say, you can't ask for everything from the observer, but if you need a point of contact or a phone number, then it has to be pushed back from where everyone else is signing in. They can't have a sign-in list right there for every person who comes. So we run into things as they come. I believe something like that happened in San Diego County, and a journalist started calling our observers. And so we have a wonderful registrar, Ruth Weiss is our coordinator and board member. And she has a great relationship, an ongoing relationship with the registrar, which is what we do, encourage you all to do as well, to have a conversation to say, this is not okay. We can't be having our citizens who come to observe have journalists call them. So they recognize they need to put the sign-in sheets back and put up something on top of them so it's protected. So we just address the issues as they happen. And we have not seen the kind of crazy violence that they're stirring up is happening at the polls. We see frustrated people, yep. And we encourage everyone to just catch a breath. And if you give everyone someone they can call, which we say call the EIPCA hotline, we can at least address the frustration that way.
Okay, thank you. Linda, are there EIP chapters in every state, or is it specific to California?
We started in California. Our strongest work is in California. We did launch EIP Nevada and DIP Arizona and EIP Arkansas in 2017. Unfortunately, believe it or not, in EIP Arizona, Arizonans aren't allowed to observe. There are no observer laws in the state of Arizona. They have to sit on their hands and hope that the parties will ensure that the integrity of the process is taking place. Also, in Arizona, the voter rolls were hidden from citizens, so we could not even purchase the voter rolls for less than $33,000 until just this last year. So yeah, Arizona, that's why there's so many challenges. There's very little citizen observation. But what's happening now is so many Californians are moving to Arizona, and they know what's going on. And so they're now pressing, we've submitted a bill to the Arizona legislature to pass a similar laws that California has to allow citizen observation. But there's now a lot more push that there be integrity, and there's a lot of work happening in Arizona. It's just not under EIP Arizona. It's under the parties, because that's how it has to be. Arkansas is such a conservative state that they ended up folding because they said, well, we're not really needed. So the party, I guess, is still a bit more conservative there. And Nevada has the same laws California has to observe. They also have the same laws California passed to manipulate the process. In 2020, we filed a lawsuit in Nevada to try to prevent, I think it was AB4, as they tried to implement all of California's unconstitutional laws for ballot managing the election, processing the ballots. We tried to sue to stop them from implementing it, saying, look what these laws have done to California. And the judge ruled saying, well, they haven't done it in Nevada yet. So they dismissed it and said, come back later when it's caused a problem. So it's
Okay.
anyway, but they're not near as big as California's. That's why I say Californians truly are the most amazing people to see way back when, in the beginning, 2008, California's pulled together. And that's nature Californians. Y'all don't maybe realize that about yourselves. I'm now in Nevada, and I'm Northern Arizona, running the company from here. I moved here when my mom had a massive heart attack. But there is a definite distinction among Californians, and you all are amazing.
We have somebody in the chat saying that her county requires that a citizen be available all 12 hours that the polls are open in order to work the polls. Is that legal?
That's a poll worker, not a poll observer, but a poll worker.
She just said a citizen be available all 12 hours that the polls are open in order to work the polls. So
That's a
yeah,
poll
poll worker,
worker.
I guess.
Yeah, that's
Yeah.
what they do. That's a hard job, but it is definitely one that's needed. But yeah, that is usually required.
Okay. And she wanted to know, she said that she was told when she cast her ballot that the computer checks the signatures, so they don't need to. Is that correct, or what's the appropriate
Well,
response to that?
they're getting away with something. So all of the counties run this ballots through a machine first that will look at it, and they'll pare it down. They'll set it at a different setting, 25% accuracy or whatever it is, but they'll run them and try and get through as many as they can. But then they have to go through a person, a visual look at them. So yeah, but to say they don't need people to do it at all, no, I think that's a problem. And I'd love to know what county that is. That would be worth having a conversation with that registrar to find out what's going on.
Nancy, do you want to take one?
I think there was one question that came in. Do you see that one? Somebody was asking, what are the rules for the logic and accuracy testing, and who can participate? Is it public?
It is supposed to be public, and we're actually going to put an article out on the accuracy testing. It's our Ventura case. It did an amazing job documenting issues with cybersecurity breaches, and part of it goes into the accuracy testing and what happens with that. But citizens have the right to observe every aspect of the election process. Just write that down, put it on your hand. You have the right to observe every aspect of the election process. In our articles that I was showing you, we cite the different laws that tell you what you can do as an observer and what the laws and how things work. And that's why I say go now to those the articles, download them and start to read them, because most of your questions are actually in those articles.
Okay. And just one question about, I know you were talking about the street indexes and how they were taking names and stuff. I know there's also abuses like in senior homes and stuff like that. Do you have any information on what's going on there?
Yeah, we've noticed that in 2012, and it's continual. Really, it comes down to family members are the best protection for seniors in the home, in any kind of facility. The seniors have a right to vote, but because they can be manipulated, it's really important that families get involved with their seniors. Because we tried in 2012, we asked if we could come into different senior facilities in LA County and just do an educational class for the seniors who wanted to come to it. And they said, no, all of our calendars are full. And we said, well, is there an opening anywhere? They said they will always be full. So they don't want our kind of information. So.
Yeah, they don't want that kind of information. Yeah. And is anything being done about the Dominion machines, that kind of thing?
Well, there's a lot being done by it. We researched the Dominion machines in 2019. We chose 6 states in California, and we did research on their policy and procedures. We did what's called an inquiry and analysis, and we did an open records request for 2 counties in the Bay Area, 2 counties in Central Valley, and 2 counties in the southern counties. Ventura County was one of the counties we asked for a wide range of information, including information on their machines. And they were the only county of the 6 that sent us documentation that was completely redacted. Now, our team in Ventura County a lot of our volunteers there have a background in machines and in research and building satellites, and their backgrounds are engineers. So we really pushed back on that redaction. We met with them. We had our attorneys meet with them, and to press them to give us more information. Bottom line, we eventually got more information. They said they couldn't give it to us because the Dominion owners, it was proprietary to the Dominion owners. But the bottom line is the whole country now knows about it. We have reports that are included in our federal lawsuit. But the challenge with Dominion, it's about contract. So somewhere along the lines, these machines, it's not just Dominion, but they're often owned by foreign companies. They have to get permission to sell the machines in the United States, and they do that through Congress. So somewhere along the line, Congress gave these companies permission to sell their machines to the states, and then the states enter into a contract with the various machines. So it's in my opinion, hopefully we see a new president and a new Senate and Congress, and that they take this seriously and they go after those contracts and shut them down.
There's been some
anything else?
comments oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead, Nancy.
No, I
Sorry.
was just gonna say, because, yeah, if you have anything else, let's go for it.
I have a question.
There was a couple of questions. There's some comments in the chat, and I just kind of wanted to get your take on it. That
Okay.
some suggestions that we have a lot of judges that are being corrupted by cartels, and that's why they can't be trusted with some of these election issues. Is that your perception, or?
Well,
What
I
do
don't
you
know
think?
that they're impacted by cartels. They could be impacted by greed. They could be impacted by partisan politics. We do know that among the judges, we have problems in every aspect of our republic. And we believe that one of the corrections to that is the ability to remove them. And that's where we're stuck at all levels, whether it's our state, city, county, state. People are being put in positions of power and authority. In some counties, they're not citizens and they're sitting on city council. So decisions are being made at every level by people who were elected, but they're not acting on the behalf of a republic form of government. Our country is a republic, not a democracy. And that's why I start with that. A democracy is 50% tell the other 51% tell the other 49% to shut up and sit down, and that's what's happening. So that's why we are so fierce about challenging this federal challenge, which has never been done in the history of the United States ever. And that's because there has never been a state that has had the citizenry work so collectively and cohesively together in 43 out of 58 counties, documenting every single aspect of the system, showing exactly how that puzzle looks when you put the pieces together, proving that the result of the system put in place is to allow manipulation of the outcome of elections. And our lawsuit has to make it all the way to the Supreme Court. We need our evidence to be looked at so that it can be determined that we need to go back to, maybe if it's not a single day, maybe it's 4 days. If you have a single day and you're taking care of a family member who's very ill, you don't make it to vote because it's only 1 day. But maybe a 4 day, a Saturday, Sunday, Monday, Tuesday. You don't need more than a Saturday, Sunday, Monday, Tuesday to vote. If you can't get there, then you didn't want to vote. But 60 days is a manipulated system. And that's why this federal case we have to get it all the way through and challenge the constitutionality of the whole thing.
Who's the watchdog, Linda, of whether it's at the county level or the state level? We have all these laws and rules in place that now that people, they're supposed to be cleaning out their voter rolls and, making sure that they're up to date and all the dead people are removed and all the, the people who have left the state have been removed. Who's the watchdog on that?
Well, there are lots of organizations who file suit. The IPCA, that's what we filed when we retained Judicial Watch. That became the Judicial Watch lawsuit, but that's actually was our lawsuit. 100% of the evidence was ours. And in that lawsuit, for organizations who did corrupt voter registration drives by simply creating a duplicate registration of one that was already there. But Judicial Watch are great attorneys. They also became co-plaintiffs in the case. That's why they can also say it was their lawsuit, but they were amazing. They did a good job, and we won that lawsuit because they didn't want to go to court. We had such a detailed, our data team is incredibly good, and the reports that we put out, again, if you look on our website, that's an example of what our team does. We sent a press release out. Judicial Watch looked at it and said, whoa, how do you guys do your work? How do you protect it? Do you use any other data? We just use the state's data. When we filed that lawsuit, the 4 agencies that we'd identified as doing corrupt voter registration drives by simply remaking a person's voter registration, they tried to sign on with the Secretary of State and be plaintiffs with the Secretary of State. Because we had documented what they do, we provided it to our Judicial Watch lawyers. They showed that evidence to whoever they showed it to, but those organizations were not allowed to add themselves into the lawsuit and bring their money and effort. And once that happened, the attorneys for the Attorney General, for the Secretary of State and LA County decided they would just settle. Because if they were going to go through court, they knew that our data was solid. It was going to show the world how bad they managed their voter rolls. And so we won the settlement, but that's not enough. We can win it, but then the other problem with California is through motor voter. Their default is to register everyone that visits the DMV, or online voter registration. They have no protections in place to ensure that there's not duplication. And again, National Voter Registration Act Section 7 requires every government agency that provides help in food stamps, HUD housing, Social Security money, and Medicare, they must be given a voter registration application. So even if they don't know if they're being registered to vote, someone who's working in those agencies can simply fill it out for them and have them sign it. So though we're cleaning up the voter rolls on this side, they're being added to on the other side through these corrupt, manipulatable processes. So it's an ongoing deal. You have to keep checking them. In 2020, we ran California's data 6 times throughout the year and sent a letter to the Secretary of State each time with an encrypted drive. We bought the data just before the primary in 2020, identified all the duplicates, sent it to the Secretary of State and the counties, same year's duplicates. You should watch for them. And then after certification of the primary, we bought the data again, identified where the problems were, sent them an encrypted drive saying, well, those ones we warned you about, there's a vote history now on some of these. And then June and August, we bought it again to just keep up on seeing if they were maintaining. And then before the primary, November, we bought it again. And then again, like I showed you, after the November primary, they didn't want us to get that data. They kept messing around until we finally could get the data in April. So you have to have tenacity and commitment, because it's not a once and done. There's no way to ensure integrity in the data without correcting federal law.
Wow.
Nancy, you have one more? We have time maybe for just one more. Whoops, you're muted.
I don't want to wear Linda.
No, I'm fine.
Okay. I
And
think
Gretchen,
Nancy's freezing.
Gretchen, I just texted over a question that Laura
Oh.
Aiden is asking.
Okay, thank you, because I couldn't find that one earlier. Okay, here it is. How close can you be to the signature verification people to observe in San Mateo County? So she's asking a very specific question.
Well,
she says she couldn't see the computer screen. We could not see the computer screen except for a few people. Anyway, it sounds like they make it hard to visit.
Too far back. Every single county. So California observer laws apply to every single county, and we have the right to observe the process. So if they're making you stand in it, but it doesn't say you can stand 2 feet behind the worker or 3 feet, but you have to be close enough to observe the process. So if to observe the process, you have to see the screen, the signature on the screen, and you have to be able to see the signature on the envelope. And that's pretty close. But what the Secretary of State has done in her latest regulations is tell the registrars, oh, these observers, they're scary people. And if you feel at all afraid, you can make them stand as far back as you want them to stand. It could be that her registrar, like many did in the primary, they make them stand 10 feet, 30 feet back, which you're seeing nothing. But again, that's why there'll be hotlines for that observer guidelines. And in that box I showed you, we will have hotlines up there so that if that's happening, the first thing you do is you step out and you call the hotline and say, this is happening. And then that's where the registrar has to be called. And EIPCA is hoping to expand our hotline so that EIPCA can be the one calling the registrar and letting them know they are in violation of law, that citizens have the right to observe the process.
And all of the information that somebody may need about that is on your website, and they can check it out there. It's just about 8 o'clock right now, so I think we're going to need to call this down, and I think we've gotten to most of the questions. So Linda, I want to thank you for all of the information, and I want to remind everybody again, go to www.eip-ca.org. .com to look up more information from this organization and see what you can do and to get involved in helping on voting day. So again, I want to say thank you to Linda, and I am going to turn this back to President Janet.
Well, this has been a very full hour and a half, and I think we have learned so much. And I'm always overwhelmed when I hear you, Linda, with information. And, you know, you give the people of California a lot of credit, and that's wonderful. That makes us feel good as Californians. But we have to give the credit to you, because if it weren't for you starting this in 2008 and noticing irregularities up in Santa Clarita, it would be a much different story now. And I think what you're going to have is going to have national implications. So we just have to thank you and Ruth for spearheading this and uncovering in the dark what was done in the dark. Light is shining on it because of you.
Well, thank you, Janet. And we do have an amazing team that everyone works together, and we're all in the same boat. We don't do it for pay. I often said to my team, if we could get a grant, you know, could I at least pay you something? Every one of them has said, no, we're not doing it for the money. We're doing it to save our country. So truly California, and I've traveled a lot, and California stands apart because they continue to keep getting up. And I encourage everyone to get up, to vote in massive numbers, but observe in massive numbers. They can't manipulate as much when they've got light, as you're saying, Janet. All of you, citizens of California, they're observing, documenting, knowing what to look for. I think it will make a difference.
Well, it will. And I know we get impatient with the process. We do, but we just keep going one step in front of the other, as you have done for years. And it's going to make a huge difference in our country. So I so appreciate it. I know everybody on this Zoom has gained so much. This has been a very, very productive and informative time, and we just give you all the gratitude. We
Thank you. It's my honor.
Thank you. All right, Gretchen, did you have any last words? I think you were talking about our fundraiser, and
I'll just remind everybody, save the date, October 18th, to come and join us at the fabulous Woodland Hills Country Club. If you're not a member of Golden State Republican Women, you're still invited to join us, and maybe by the end of that night, you will be a member.
Yes.
We'd love to have as many of you as are interested come to see us and find out more about us, and to see Steve Hilton. And again, remember, we will be adding other names to our lineup for that evening. So thank you all for being here tonight, and thanks to the team for all the good work today, or the last week or two.
Absolutely. Applause to you all. Thank you. Good night, everybody.
Okay, thank you.
Good night, everyone.